Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and one of the things I've noticed lately that I want to talk to you guys about is this really bizarre idea you see on the internet today. And this didn't exist in the past. It seems to be just a modern phenomenon with so many bodybuilding related and functional fitness related stuff that's all over the internet, of people associating any effort to actually get decently strong on the squat, bench, and deadlift. If those are major components of any training routine, they think that it's powerlifting. And in fact, any program with that in there, like, oh, they're obsessed with powerlifting, whoever's writing those programs, such as a bunch of mine. And the reality is nothing could be further from the truth. Powerlifting didn't select those lifts because those lifts were part of powerlifting. Those were lifts that were incorporated into the growing sport of powerlifting when it started because they were already existing strength exercises that were used by strength and conditioning coaches around the world for athletes in a wide variety of endeavors. They're all big barbell movements. They're big barbell movements that recruit a lot of muscle mass and have a very strong performance element. So the idea that these exercises are somehow exclusive to powerlifting and that anyone who's focusing on actually getting stronger on them is powerlifting is absurd, because most of your basic strength programs for athletes in dozens of different sports include these three exercises. Now, arguably, there are some situations where one of them might be replaced for something else, and obviously almost no routine only contains these three exercises. Certain examples of certain types of field athletes or wrestlers or combat athletes might replace the deadlift with the power clean. Okay, that's relatively common. In fact, that's what we saw with Bill Starr's program, and a lot of people almost accuse that of being a powerlifting program. It was for football players, and it's still a great program. Bill Starr's Mad Cows 5x5 is still a great program for people who are going to compete in any contact sport. He de-emphasized the deadlift and put more efforts on the power clean while keeping the deadlift in there, but it's a general strength program. It's a general strength program. And the fact of the matter is, the squat, bench, and deadlift have been mainstays in tons of sports, including bodybuilding. If you go back historically and look at before we got to this modern era where bodybuilding was built completely off drugs, and that includes even natty bodybuilding at this point. Hell, half of the natty pro bodybuilders are blasting gear. Half of them don't know how to train. Before that era, these are three exercises out of the ones that they did. These guys all did a variety of exercises that all these guys focused on. I mean, you go back and look at Reg Park, one of the most classic physiques of all time. Bodybuilder, not a power lifter, bodybuilder. Fantastic physique, and that was in the era where the only thing they had was D-bol, and people generally today say anyone who just uses D-bol is going to look terrible. That was about the only anabolic he had access to in that era. But the guy could apparently bench press 500 pounds, squat 600, deadlift 700. The guy had a ridiculously aesthetic Herculean physique, but he was strong because guys from that era did focus on strength, and they focused on big, heavy barbell movements, and then they used other exercises to kind of fill in the gaps. These guys all did lots of overhead pressing, right? They all did overhead pressing, squat, bench, deadlift. A few other barbell movements. Some of them even focused on the Olympic lifts, and then they threw in their curls and their leg curls and everything else that they needed to shore up whatever their perceived weak links were. But that's how they trained. And the reality is, these are exercises that are staples of any basic training program. And any person who is trying to get into shape for almost any physical endeavor, it wouldn't be a bad idea for them to build a strength base on several big barbell movements. I would say at least 5 exercises. We don't need to narrow down which 5, because any variety would help. But barbell training is always going to give you the most bang for your buck in terms of putting on overall size and strength and power. And I'm not even specifying which barbell exercises. These 3 could be part of the mix, but maybe not all 3 would be for every athlete. There are certain athletes who would do better to focus on overhead pressing, whether it's a strict press, a push press, a clean and jerk, versus a bench press. And you know what? That's okay. There are people who have specific needs to where a different exercise brings more to the table for them. Same thing in certain cases where the deadlift might be replaced by the power clean. But you know what? Most well-balanced routines actually include all of those lifts. All those lifts. Again, back to the perfect example that I gave earlier. I've been going all the way back to the 70s for the Bill Starr's Mad Cow. And he actually wrote that in a book called Only the Strong Will Survive Football. And that wasn't just the linemen, it was the running backs. Even the quarterback would do these programs. All right? And the program focuses around, I believe, the squat, bench, deadlift, overhead press, and the power clean. And I think it might have some rows also in there. I believe it does have rows. So, 6 basic barbell movements. We have strength and conditioning standards with charts for your body weight for 6 basic exercises you can find anywhere. And I've linked that before in the past. It includes squat, bench, deadlift, strict standing press, power clean, power snatch. You know what? That would be a basic strength and conditioning program, since we have strength standards for those 6 exercises. And if a person were to actually build a solid base on those 6 exercises and do nothing else in terms of their weightlifting, they would have a reasonably balanced physique. Might not be perfectly balanced. Their biceps might lag a little bit, but it's not like that's hard to fix. Throw some chin-ups or curls and done. But, if someone focused on those 6 exercises, wouldn't they have a big, strong back? Wouldn't they have strong, thick legs? How about their shoulder girdle? I mean, it's particularly, you look at deadlift, overhead press, power clean, power snatch. That would build an entire massive shoulder girdle. But you know what? Those are all exercises that would make people more explosive within the confines of their genetics. Those are a lot of explosive lifts in there. Big, powerful, full body movements. Those are athletic movements. Everything but maybe the bench press. That's the only one of those 6 that really isn't a big, full body exercise, but because Americans seem to have an obsession with the bench press, because certain athletes like football players, boxers, need that actual angle to some extent to hit people, it makes sense that it's still included in a lot of strength and conditioning routines. But if there's one exercise you'd take out of that 6 to make optional for a general purpose athletic program, that might be the one you remove. And all the other stuff in the world can't replace those exercises. Again, in terms of if a person is trying to be fit, if a person is trying to be athletic, you aren't really going to do much better than those exercises. Sure, we could argue that weighted body weight movements could have their merit. Weighted dips, weighted chin-ups. Okay, those are good exercises, particularly for the upper body. They don't add the full body component that those do they? They also don't have the fine adjustments that those do. All the isolation work in the world will never put on the amount of full body power and size that those exercises can. So it's just bizarre that people have this idea, because everyone on the internet today wants to basically break things into groups, like either you're a bodybuilder, you're a power lifter, you're a CrossFitter. Everyone wants this label. They want to label everything, and if anyone does anything remotely related to those, it automatically falls into that category. If anyone does general physical preparedness as a large part of their routine, they're automatically CrossFit. People associate it with that. People associate doing curls with being a bodybuilder. People associate anyone who squats and deadlifts heavy with it being powerlifting. And the reality is that's just not the case. That's not the case. These are just general basic strength and conditioning exercises. All these things are. And like I was saying earlier, if someone really wanted to make people athletic, those 6 basic lifts, 3 of which are the big 3 in powerlifting, those 6 lifts will build an athlete. They'll absolutely build an athlete. You throw in a little general physical preparedness work with that, and then some sport-specific training. What more does an athlete really need for most sports? They don't. That will cover their basis. They would just focus on the exercises out of there that'll give them the most carryover and just maintain overall balance by doing all of them. But you could do a lot worse than that. So again, people have these weird ideas and prejudices because of labels that people don't seem to understand general fitness training or general strength training anymore. They seem to think that if anyone focuses at all on any exercise or training style that is used by one of these subcategories, that it falls into that category, when this is actually really just general fitness and athleticism and strength. It's not specialization. If a person's goal is to just get to a 400-pound squat and they're a healthy young man, that is not powerlifting. That is not a strength specialization. That's just building up a strength base. That's all it is. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.